You guys seem to like my last video about Directus 9 and many of you reached out and asked for more Directus 9 content.
Okay, but only because you begged.
So I decided to make it a series where we will be using Directus 9 as our API and CMS, and of course Next.js for the front end of our site, kind of like with Strapi and Next.js series. This time, however, we will be adding Tailwind into the mix and also include React Query right from the start for better performing API requests, caching, state management and so on. Oh, and also instead of using REST API, we are going to be using GraphQL for this series. I can't think of a better time to start this series because Vercel just released a Next.js 12, which brought with it some major changes and improvements to the framework. Directus is still in beta or release candidate phase. Much has changed on that front from the last video also, so this would be a good time to check all of that out. The goal of this series is to create a website and publish it online. We will be using DigitalOcean for that, and also near the end of the series I'm going to show you how to implement automatic deployments using GitHub Actions, just like I did for my website. But before all that, we have to start somewhere, so the goal for this episode will be to install Directus 9, Next.js, Tailwind, React Query, create a simple collection in Directus 9 and display it on the page with GraphQL. So let's get started. So let's install Directus 9 first. We will put Directus and Next.js into the same directory so that we have all of the files in our code editor once we get all this going. One node though, so node-v, check this out. So you need to have at least node 1220 for Directus 9 and node 1222 for new version of Next.js, so that's version 12. So make sure that you are using either the latest version or the version that is at least 12.22. Okay, so first of all, let's just install Directus, and we are just going to do that by, actually, first of all, we need to create a directory. I'm going to do mkdir, and I'm going to call this one Directus Next. cd into it. And now we want to install Directus into the directory called API. So this is going to be our API, and we are going to install Next.js into the directory called app. So you just do npm init Directus project, and this is the name of your directory, API, right? Or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it API. Press enter and wait for the installation to finish. So once this has been installed, we need to provide information about our database. In our case, we are going to be using SQLite. This is going to be our database file path. And now we need to set up an email. So it's going to be test@test.com. The password is going to be test. And that's it. Now we just cd into API. And now we can run npx directus start. And it's already started at port localhost 855. Let's just check it out if everything works. Okay, so we are on our login screen. We sign in and it seems that everything is working. Great. Now let's install Next.js and Tailwind. So I'm in my Directus Next directory. If we do ls, we can see that we have API right here. Now we want to create our app. This is what we are going to call directory in which Next.js and Tailwind are going to be installed. And we are going to install Tailwind and Next.js with just one line of code. So you do npx create next app at latest -e with Tailwind CSS app. So this is going to implement Tailwind CSS automatically with your installation of Next.js so that we don't have to do that separately. Also, we are using Next.js 12. So this is the newest version of Next.js with major changes to it. We are not going to go through all of that in this video. You have a great video from Farship.io where he explains all the newest stuff that came in with Next.js. So check that video out if you want to know more. And also I hope that during this series we will try using some of those new features. But for now we do npx create next step latest -e with Tailwind CSS, and the app right here is the name of the directory that you want to install Next.js in. So let's just press enter and install all of this. So once this is installed, we cd into app, and from here we just run npm run dev. And since Next is now using Rust for a compiler, you can see that this works very fast. Let's just check if our site works. Okay, so we get welcome to Next.js. Of course, this is working. Now let's open up this project inside of our code editor and see what we get there. I just want to show you some things related to Tailwind. So in this project, we have API, this is our Directus setup, and we have app, this is our Next.js application. As you can see right here, we have something called tailwind.config.js. If we open it up, just please make sure that you have this JIT mode enabled, JIT or whatever it's called. It's just-in-time compilation. What this is going to do is it's going to take all of the classes that you are not using on your site and compile it so that once you build this application, you will get only the classes that you are using on your website. So your CSS should be very small. Also, we can check out in the pages index.js file. And as you can see here, we already have Tailwind's classes applied to our divs, main, tags, and so on. I would also advise you to install a plugin for your code editor. There are plugins for Tailwind, for VS Code, for Sublime Text, for PHP Storm, which I'm using here. This is going to help you to style your application by providing you with auto-completions, like you can see right here. If I write something like text blue is 600, I will get the color right here. I think the same functionality is available in VS Code's plugin, so please install that. It will make developing your app, if you are using Tailwind CSS, much easier. The next thing that we are going to do is we are going to install React Query, because we are going to be using it this episode. So let's just install it now. You do that by going to the app directory in which Next.js resides, and just do npm install React Query. Okay, so once this is installed, we can go to our code editor and just implement it. So I'm going to open up a file called app.js. And as you can see, we are importing Tailwind CSS right here. Now I want to import query client provider and query client from React Query. Next thing we need to do, we need to initialize our query client. You do that by doing const query client is equal to new query client, so that we have query client available everywhere. And in here, we are going to wrap our components inside of query client provider, like this. Now let's just save this and check if our site still works. Because I had problems, as you can see, we are getting some errors right here. I don't know why this is happening. So this happened to me while preparing for this episode. And as you can see, we are getting errors in our Next.js application. And if I Control-C out of it, so if I turn off the server, if I do npm run dev again, we can't start the server for some reason. Something weird is happening. So to fix that, you just do npm install again. Okay, and let's try it now. So npm run dev, and now the server has been started and our site should be working, right? I don't know why that is happening, but I had the same problem. If you have this problem like me, this is the solution for it, I guess. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to create posts and we want to display them on our page using GraphQL. So first of all, we need to go right here and create a new collection. And this collection is just going to be called posts. And we want to have status, sort, date created, user created, date updated, and user updated fields. So everything. Okay. Once we create that, we can add new fields to it. So if we click create field, we want to have a title first. So as you can see, this is new from the last version. If I click on input, I just want to have a field called title, which is going to be a string. Save this, and that's it. As you can see, you don't have any more steps. You have just this right now. So we are currently on Directus 9 RC100. So let's create another field. This is going to be a markdown field, and the unique column name is going to be body. And I don't think we need to set anything here. We just save it. Okay, so let's create another field, and I'm going to call this one slug. So it's going to be an input. It's going to be a slug. It's also going to be a string. I'm going to save this, but I want to change something right here. So I'm just going to click edit field. And now I get this old interface, because in the interface I want to set slug to have this slugify option. So this is going to be our slug. So when you write something in it, it's going to add dashes and so on. You are not allowed to have spaces or some kind of special characters and so on. So we are going to make this field be slugified. Save this. Let's create another field, and this field I'm going to actually choose an image, because this is going to be our featured image. And that's about it. Save this. Let me just also edit this. For this display, we are displaying an image, and I'm just going to set it to display it as a circle. Save this. Okay. Our posts are automatically saved. There's one more thing I want to do. So I want to have title and slug be one beside each other and be half width. So I'm going to do this to be half width. Also do the same thing for slug, and then I'm going to move slug over here, and that's it. Now if we go here, we are automatically on posts, and now if we want to create an item, we just create it. We add slug, so I'm going to call it, we add title, I'm going to call it my first post. And for the slug, I'm going to also just write my first post. So this is not slugifying for some reason. Let me just save this and check this out again. So for the slug, if we edit the field, go to interface, for some reason this option didn't save. So I'm going to make it a safe value, save it. Maybe I forgot to save it, I don't know. Go right here, go to my first post and try to write it again. Now when I click space, it adds dashes automatically. Okay, next thing, I'm just going to add some text to the body. Okay, something like this, and I'm going to add a featured image. So I'm just going to choose this one, click open, and save this post. Now behind the scenes, I'm going to add 2 more posts so that we have at least 3 posts that we are going to display on our page. Okay, so I have my 3 posts right here. Don't forget to set them to be published. So if you go to a post, you have a status right here, so you can choose between published, draft, and archived. Set them to be published because you want to display published posts. Next thing I want to do is, I don't like this table right here, so it's showing me the body, slug, status, title in kind of a weird way. So let's arrange that a little bit better. So we want to have the title first. Actually, we want to have featured image first, and I'm going to set it up here. Okay, featured image. And then we have title. I don't want to show the body. I don't want to show the, I want to show the slug. Okay. Status is okay. And let's just add date created and date updated. Okay. The problem I see here is that this featured image is just displaying the ID of an image instead of an actual image. So I probably didn't save something when setting up the featured image, because I wanted to show a small image with a circle. So let's go to posts again here, go to the featured image, click edit field, and for the interface, I think nope, or this is okay, but for the display, actually, I want to show an image and I want to show display as a circle. Save this. Okay, now let's go to posts. And now, as you can see, we are displaying a small rounded image for our featured image, right? So we are getting featured image, title, slug, status, date created, and date updated. Now this looks okay. Now let's try to access our posts, and to access them through REST API, you would just do items, posts. Now, as you can see, we don't have permission to access this. So I'm just going to go right here, go to our settings, roles and permissions, go to public. And for posts, I want to set this I or read to be all access. And that should actually be it. Now, if I just refresh this, I will get all of my posts. Great. So this works. Now we need to fetch the data through our Next.js app using GraphQL, and then we want to display it on our page. Now, before we display the data, we first need to fetch it. And to fetch the data, we are going to be using GraphQL. And I'm mainly using GraphQL because I don't want to write those weird REST API parameters to get something from our API. Doing this with GraphQL is going to be much more elegant, as you will see. So first of all, how do we access the GraphQL in Directus 9? Well, it's actually pretty easy. You can access it directly from the browser. So I'm going to localhost 8055 GraphQL, and then I'm querying for posts, and I want to display ID and the title of the post. So if I press enter, you can see that I am getting all of the posts with the ID and the title. And this is very nice because we don't have to fetch all the data for our posts example, but we can just fetch the data that we need. So in this case, maybe just ID and the title. Now, before we start actually coding, we should set up our env variables, because once we push this to the server, we want to change those variables to reflect our other API, not our local API, but some API that is living on the internet and that our Next.js app can access. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create inside of our app, so in the root of our app, we are going to create a new file, which we are going to be calling .env.local. Okay, and here we want to set up something like this. So we want to set up two variables. One is going to be GraphQL, and it's going to define our GraphQL route, which is going to be localhost 8055 GraphQL. And we are going to also set up our next public GraphQL, which is also going to be localhost 8055 GraphQL. The next public in env local is going to be used on the client side, and GraphQL is going to be used on the server side if we need it. So you need to prefix this with next public. You can read the documentation for that if you're not sure what I'm saying here, but it's actually pretty simple. So all of your environment variables should have this next public if you want to access them through the browser, right? Or your client. So let's just save this, and we need to restart our server. So I'm just going to quit out of it and run it again. And as you can see, this starts almost instantly with this new Rust compiler. Okay, great. Now that we have this set up, the next thing I want to do actually is create a fetch.data.js helper, which is going to allow us to fetch data from our GraphQL API. And to do that, I'm going to create a new folder and a new file. So I'm going to create a folder called helpers. And in it, I'm going to create a file called fetchdata.js. So in fetchdata.js, I'm just going to paste this in. So first of all, we are getting the GraphQL API from process.env next public GraphQL, which we defined in our env local file. And then we are fetching the data. So this is taken pretty much line by line from the Next.js documentation. So this is just a fetch data function that is going to contact our server with the post method. This is very important, and with the headers of application JSON. And in the body, it's going to send the query and the variables for that query. We are not going to be using variables in this episode, but in the later episodes, we are probably going to be using variables a lot. And then we are just awaiting for the response. If the response has errors, we want to throw that errors into our console, and then we are just going to return the JSON that we are getting from our API. So this is our fetchdata.js. Okay, save this. Next thing I want to do, I want to create a new folder with queries.js inside of it, and we are going to call both the folder and the file queries. So let's go new. We're going to define directory called queries, and in it I'm going to have queries.js. You can organize this however you like. I'm just doing it this way. So you can have a query per file, or you can have multiple queries in one file, and so on. You will see. So first thing that we want to do inside of this file is we want to import the fetch data function, because we are going to be using it to fetch the data. And here I'm going to export a query which we are going to be calling get homepage posts. Okay, so as you can see, this is an asynchronous function. Then we are going to define the data and await for fetch data function, to which we are going to send two parameters. One is going to be the actual query, and the second one is going to be variables, like we are expecting right here. So query and variables. Okay, so to do that, you just do something like this. Okay, so we are defining the data. We are waiting for fetch data, because as you can see, fetch data is also asynchronous function. And we are sending our actual GraphQL query. So we are calling it homepage posts. We are receiving posts just like we did in our browser. So query is going to be posts, and it's going to consist of ID and the title. I'm going to just fix this here. And I will explain this a little bit later. So we are getting the homepage posts, and for the posts we want to get IDs, titles, slug, featured image, and body. Nothing else. We are not going to get the date created, the date updated, status, or whatever. And then we are sending variables. You don't need to send this, but it's good to send the empty variables object when interacting with GraphQL. After that, we want to return data, data again, and posts. So we want to return the posts, because if we take a look at our query in our browser, we see that we get an object called data, and then inside of it we get posts. So we want to just return just this from our query. So just this right here, so that we can easily display it on our page. Now we have our fetch data and our query set up. Next thing we need to do, we need to display that data. But first of all, we are just going to fetch it in our index.js file to see if everything is working. So first of all, I'm going to import two things right here. We are going to import useQuery from React Query, because we are going to be using this hook to get the data. Not to get the data, but to actually cache the data and leave all the data handling to the React Query. And also we are going to be needing get homepage posts that we created in our queries. So this is going to get the posts that we want to display on the homepage. Great. So let's just check this out. And if you're not sure what's going on here, because I'm maybe going a bit too fast, check out the episode about React Query that we did in Nextjs and Strapi series, where I've gone a little bit slower with this. But what you need to know is that we are just going to add this. So we are getting the status data that we are calling posts. We are getting errors, is fetching, is success, and we want to get all of that through use query. And we're going to call this query posts. And now we just need to pass in the function that is going to get all of our data. So you just do async, await, and get homepage posts, right? So get homepage posts is our actual query right here that is calling this fetch data function. And that should be it. So since we are calling the data that we are getting, so the default name for this would be data, but you can rename it to posts by doing this. So we want to console log out posts to see if we are getting everything that we needed from our API. So you can just do posts log. So console log posts, save it, and let's go to the browser and check if we are getting everything. Refresh it. As you can see, I have an array here with 3 objects in it, and we are getting the body, featured image, ID, slug, and title for all of our 3 posts. So this works. Now the only thing left to do is to display those posts on our homepage. Okay, now let's just remove everything from the homepage. Well, almost everything, not everything. Also, let's change the styling in our div. So we are just left with flex, flex direction column. Items are going to be centered. The padding on top and bottom is going to be 2. Max width is going to be 2XL. And we are setting this MX. So this means margin from left and right to be auto. So this is going to center our container. So this is going to be our container to the center of the page. And if I write something here, we can see that. So if we go to our browser, as you can see, we get this right here. Okay, great. Now we want to display the data. And we are going to create a separate component for displaying that data, but I just want to show you something first. When dealing with React Query, there are some things that you need to look out for. For example, we can just do this, right? Okay, so this is a very simple iteration through our data. If I save this and go to my page, refresh it, I'm probably going to get an error, right? We're getting this error because we still didn't get that data and we don't have anything to display. So to get around that, you need to watch out for this is success variable. You take it, paste it right here, and then this means if the fetch of our data is successful, then display the titles of our posts when we get is success. And also, since we are not going to be using any of these, at least in this episode, we can just remove is fetching, error, and status. So that we are just left with the data and is success. Now if I save this, go to my browser, now I can refresh it as many times as I like, but we are getting my first post, second post, and so on. We're getting this error because we didn't set up the key prop on the div, but we are not going to do that at all, at least not on this div, because we are now going to create a special, well, not special, but we are going to create a component that is going to display each post as a card. So now I'm just going to go to my root and create a new file and folder. So the folder is going to be called components and the file is going to be called postcard.js. So in this postcard.js, first of all, I want to define a function or a component, right? So we are just going to export default function which we are going to call postcard. And I'm just going to define parameters or props that this function or component is going to receive. And those parameters are going to be called image. So we want to display an image, we want to display a title, and we want to display a body for our post. Then we want to return something here. And I'm saying something because a great thing about Tailwind is that you can find a lot of components online which you can just freely use. So if I go to this web page on tailwindcomponents.com, component simple card, we get this simple card right here. So I can just show you the code and also get that code and paste it in. So I'm just going to paste this in right here. We are getting some errors right here because this image is not closed. So we are going to close that image. Class names are correct. We are going to delete this because we don't want to show, let me just show you. We don't want to show these tags right here or these hashtags, right? So I'm going to delete this and now we are only left with so the title, this is going to be our title, and this here is going to be our body, and here we are going to display an image. So for now, I'm just going to leave this image as is, but I'm going to change this to be title, and this right here to be body. So here we are going to display our body. Here we are going to display our title, and the image we are not displaying for now. We're going to set it up a little bit later because it needs just a little bit more of an additional setup, as you will see. Okay, let's just save this. Now we can go to our index.js file, and here we want to import that postcard component. Like this. So we are importing postcard from components postcard, and now here where we are defining where we are displaying our posts, so instead of using this div, we are just going to do postcard, and the title for the card is going to be post.title, and the body is going to be post.body. Okay, and also we need a key is equal to post.id so that we don't get those errors inside of our console. If I save this, let's see if everything works correctly. Right, okay. Now we are getting my first post, my second post, third post, but we are getting the same images for each post. Okay, so now we are going to handle those images. So how do you get the images from Directus 9? Well, they live on the assets endpoint. So if we go into our console right here and we check out what we are getting, as you can see, we get for featured image, we are getting just the ID of an image. So how do we access that image? So I'm just going to copy this, go right here, go to assets, and I'm just going to paste the ID of an image right here. Okay, now it says you don't have to permission to access this. You have to go to our Directus permission roles and permissions, go to system collections, and now here you have Directus files, and you are just going to allow access to those files. Now if we go here and refresh it again, we are getting our image. Okay, great. So now we know how to access this. We have the ID, we have the assets folder, and that's it. Before we do anything, let's quickly go to env local again, and we are going to define these variables here also. So I'm just going to call them assets URL, which are going to be localhost 8055 assets, and of course next public assets URL. Save this. We have to restart our server, so let's do this again. Man, this is so fast. Okay. Great. So now that we have our variables defined, we can go to postcard.js and just set that variable up. So we are going to call it assets URL process.env next public assets URL. So now in our image tag, instead of hard coding our image, we are just going to do something like this. So we are calling our assets URL, which is going to give us localhost 8055 assets, and then we wanna get the image. But as you will see, this will not work, and I will explain why in just a second. So if I save this right now and go to the browser, and check out our app, you can see that we are getting GraphQL errors, so 400 bad requests. So for some reason, when you enable this to be publicly available so that the people can actually see your images, now this query that we defined right here won't actually work. But it will work if we just do something like this. So in featured image, we also want to display the ID. And then we are going to get the actual ID of that image in the featured image object. So if I save this, now this is still not going to work because now we are not passing the ID of an image. Let me just actually see if I can show you the response. So as you can see, we are getting broken images here because now we have featured image, which is an object, and it has an ID property in it with our ID. So to fix this, this is very simple. We just go to the index.js, and here for the image, we are just going to say post featured image dot ID. Save it, check it out, and now this works. Now we are getting all of our posts, and we are also getting our images. One thing about these images, and we are probably going to be talking a bit more about this throughout the series, but I just want to show you the basic stuff for now. So if we go here to our postcard.js, now we are getting this image. What you can do here is I can just say something like question mark, width is going to be 100 and height is also going to be 100, right? Width and height are going to be 100. If I save this, go to the browser, you don't see any changes because our CSS is setting those images to be the width of the container they are in, but you may see that they are a bit pixelated. Let me show you this in a better way. So as you can see, they have the class name of width is full for the image. So if I delete this, save it, go to the browser, now you can see that our images are 100 by 100 pixels, and this is great. Okay, so let's just remove what we did right now, check our site, and we are getting those posts. Great. Okay, so this has been it for this first episode. I hope you liked it. We actually did a lot of stuff here. So displaying those images, displaying the posts, creating our API, setting everything up. I think we did good. All of us deserve pat on the back. And remember, everything we did here will be available for you on GitHub. The link will be in the description below. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.